by Lia Holla, who is a young professional in peace and disarmament who has been working and volunteering on policy, education, and advocacy with community, national, and international NGOs, as well as government since 2014. Her approach has been shaped by experiences such as participating in a 200-kilometer peace walk led by Indigenous grassroots grandmothers, studying physics and political science at McGill University, and serving for 5 years as executive director of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War Canada. Her current work focuses on advancing disarmament education for students, secondary school teacher unions, the general public, and parliamentarians in Canada. She was recognized as one of 25 global leaders under the age of 29 by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs and named a leader for tomorrow and into the future. She has also participated in 2 years of UNODA's Youth for Disarmament training programs and represented the cohort at UN meetings.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you, everyone. I'm really, really grateful to be here today. It's really an honor to be invited and to speak with such an engaged and informed and impressive audience. I've really been blown away by your guys' presentations, and I'm grateful for a chance to work with you. My name is Lia. I'm going to be talking about a couple of things, including youth engagement and reimagining security in the age of nuclear weapons. Okay, yeah, so see, these are some of the things I'll be discussing: intersectionality, youth engagement, my personal journey and ideas for action, and ideas for what it looks like to move forward together. But first, I'm hoping we can start with a game. Would everybody mind putting their hands up? So we're gonna do 1 finger if you disagree with the prompt, 5 if you agree, and you can do anywhere in between. So test, I like Taylor Swift. Oh wow, this is a controversial question. Maybe Kendrick Lamar is better than Drake. Oh, okay. Okay, next question. I think about climate change often. A lot of variants, a lot of 5s. I think about war and weapons often. I feel like I know what disarmament is. Okay, I'm gonna invite you to turn inwards and share with your table, either why you feel you don't know or what you think it is. Can I give 1 minute? Okay, I'm gonna invite everyone to come back and put your hands back up, finish your final thoughts. Next prompt, I believe change is possible. Wow, this is the first room I've ever been in where I only see 5s. That's fantastic. Wow, round of applause for you guys. And hands back up. I feel, this one's inspired by Guelph. I feel empowered to make a difference to nuclear disarmament. Also really wonderful. I believe the world can change. Okay, I see a couple ones, but a lot of 5s, and that makes me really happy. So thank you guys for participating in that opening game with me. So I guess I just want to start with talking about nuclear disarmament, building off of what Seth was saying, not just as an existential threat, but as a solution. We are inheriting a really, really frightening world. We're seeing a climate emergency, we're seeing systemic injustices, patriarchy, racism, colonialism, widening poverty, rising hate, famine, war. It's really scary, and it can feel like there are just so many problems to deal with. But there are two aspects about disarmament I particularly love. First, disarmament isn't just another problem to add to the list, but rather disarmament is a clear, concrete solution, a blueprint to moving forward, and a choice. You can take, as some of the speakers have said before, you can take a nuclear weapon apart. You can stop taking uranium out of the ground. You can choose to disarm. Personally, I find this relatively simple compared to dealing with dismantling patriarchy or racism. But the other thing I love about disarmament is that when we're working on disarmament, we're actively contributing to justice and protecting health and protecting our planet. We're working through disarmament to advance racial justice, climate justice, equity, gender equity, and indigenous sovereignty. Threats to humanity, all the greatest ones, climate change, injustice, nuclear weapons, war, and hate, they all transcend the borders that we categorically give them. They reinforce each other, and they justify each other. And that can be frightening, but a really wonderful part about that is that when we challenge one, we challenge all of them. I think this is really encapsulated wonderfully by the word and the term intersectionality coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. And I think it's one thing that's really empowering about working on nuclear weapons, is that when you're working on nuclear weapons, you're working on dismantling patriarchy, you're working on gender justice, you're working on indigenous justice. I'm gonna dive into some of these intersections a little bit more. So this was done really wonderfully yesterday, so I won't go too much into this. But racial justice and militarization, as well as climate, are inextricably related. Racial hierarchies have been created and sustained through violence, and the very industries that produce the tools of violence and financially gain from them rely on those same racial hierarchies. When we invest in weapons, we depend on having another to use them against. Racism, fear, and othering justify the existence of these tools of violence, like nuclear weapons. And when we challenge nuclear weapons, we're also challenging dehumanization. Similarly, the climate crisis cannot be separated from militarism. The military is one of the largest contributors to global carbon emissions, and those least responsible suffer the most. Some of these photos are of the mines in the Dene Nation, of nuclear testing. As you guys know, as you guys have researched, as you guys demonstrated in your presentation so wonderfully yesterday, nuclear weapons disproportionately harm those who are minorities, and nuclear weapons are a colonial institution. Sorry. Do you think you could advance the slide manually? Oops. Well, I'll start talking about gender. Gender I'll lean into a little bit more. Nuclear weapons, violence, gender, and power are all also inextricably connected. The same systems that produce nuclear weapons are systems built on domination, hierarchy, and control. They are the same systems that produce gender inequity and normalize violence in our society. Just to be clear, when I'm talking about gender here, I'm not talking about biological male and female bodies. I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine. And when we're talking about patriarchy, we're talking about the dichotomization of traits, so splitting attributes into binaries. Aggression versus passivity, strength versus vulnerability, logic versus emotion. I'm talking about these political and social categories and a system that values the masculine traits over the feminine. I'm not saying anything about all men or all women, just as a baseline to clarify. And when we talk about nuclear discourse, this plays out in very, very concrete ways. Carol Kahn, one of the leading feminist scholars in security studies, who's also a physicist, during the Cold War, she went undercover in a nuclear physics lab to better understand how people think about nuclear weapons, how people are okay with this system. She found that analysts' language were saturated in gendered metaphors. Nuclear missiles were often described in hypermasculine, sexualized ways. Discussions such as whose nuclear arsenals are bigger are often still present in our modern day headlines and political discourse. Aggression and domination were idealized, while empathy and care were dismissed as weakness. I think this is really well demonstrated, if you wouldn't mind, in the next slide. In a quote, the quote, if it comes up, you can read in full, but the quote discusses the perspective of a white male physicist in a lab. They were talking about capacity of a missile in a calculation that was slightly wrong. And instead of 36 million casualties, there would be 30 million. All of a sudden, he blurted out, 30 million? Only 30 million deaths? He said the room that went silent. He said he never felt so judged, and he felt like a woman. Okay, sorry, there's the quote in full. I'd suggest you read the full article. He said, they didn't even look at me. It was awful. I felt like a woman. The physicist added that henceforth he was careful never to blurt out anything like that again. I think this illustrates really well that gender norms are used not only to push forward nuclear weapons, but also to dismiss disarmament and advocates themselves. When calls for nuclear abolition are labeled as emotional, naive, or unrealistic, these words aren't neutral. They're tools of power. They're used to delegitimize alternative versions of security. You can't dismantle patriarchy without dismantling militarism. And when you're working on disarming nuclear weapons, you're also working on advancing gender justice. Militarized masculinity fuels both. A logic that says safety comes through dominance, not relationships. And that's also reflected in data. On the next slide, it also shows a study done by Cynthia Enlow, which demonstrates a correlation between countries with more militarized cultures tends to have higher rates of domestic violence. So the local and the international are inextricably linked. Conversely, Valerie Hudson in a study demonstrated that the single most reliable indicator of whether a state is peaceful with its neighbors is the physical security of women. Not GDP, not religion, not democracy, but how safe women are in their own homes. So when we talk about disarmament, we're not talking about an isolated issues. We're talking about transforming the values that underpin violence itself. We're talking about creating systems that prioritize cooperation over conquest, empathy over ego, and care over control. These threats, nuclear weapons, climate change, war, hate, injustice, don't exist in silos. So they transcend boundaries, so our solutions must too. This gives me a lot of hope because every single person working on any of this work, working on protecting the environment, working on feminism, working on racial justice, is working towards the same goal. We're all working to transform just systems to address human security, well-being, and justice, and it helps disarmament. There are partners in this work. I think communication and organization are going to be an essential part of our next step in building bridges and building a strong disarmament movement because we're all working on the same goals. You don't need to be a diplomat to make change. You can be. You don't need to be a lawyer. You can be. But every single conversation and collaboration matters. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this intergenerational event with speakers from all different backgrounds. If we could skip to the next slide, please. Yeah, I skipped a couple things, but the challenges we face, are formidable. We saw this in Seth's presentation. We saw this in a couple yesterday. 9 nuclear states. We have a really scary task ahead of us, and we are inheriting really frightening tensions. Geopolitically, we have to convince Russia and the US to disarm, Russia and China and the US, Israel coming out of this past 3 years, Pakistan and India, France, Britain. We have a really large task ahead of us. We have so much money allocated towards nuclear weapons. Every second that passes, $4,000 Canadian goes towards nuclear disarmament. Every time you sneeze, $4,000. I don't know what you make an hour. In high school, I made $10.25. So that is a lot of money. And I think it shows also that poverty is a policy choice, and once again, disarmament is a way forward. But we're not alone. We have all of the people in this room, but not just in this room, across the country and across the world, working together. And we've seen how it's happened before. Change isn't possible, it's inevitable. And I know you all believe it because you showed me at the beginning. Talking a little bit about youth and their role. You know, it's not just my opinion and the opinion of the organizers of this conference and the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, but at the very largest level of international institutions, the United Nations Security Council, it has been affirmed that youth have a role in shaping the future, and youth have an active role to play in security discussions. This has resulted in tens of millions of dollars also of funding allocated towards opportunities for youth, towards resources. I'd encourage you all to check the United Nations Disarmament Dashboard, disarmament education, their resources for teachers, the disarmament strategy. But if anybody tells you otherwise, you know, I hope you can use this as an example. Talking a little bit about myself and my own journey, it's really meaningful to be here today with high school students because I started with disarmament in a small town called Esquimalt, a 2-hour boat ride and 4 buses away from Vancouver. And I heard a speaker at an event somewhat similar to this talk about militarism and climate change and Canada's complicity in some of the world issues. And it really moved me to learn more and get involved with a local peace club, Escape, the Esquimalt students caring about peace and the environment, where I made close friends who I still work with today, such as Magritte, and Saskia is in there. She works with Science for Peace. We worked in our school. We got other kids in our classes to sign the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We did bake-offs, we made a Christmas album, and we had fundraisers. We took all of the signatures and we brought them to our city council and continued to organize. After I graduated, I went to McGill and started up a peace club with some other friends. Other friends who also stayed involved, Ruth, who went on to work with ICANN and other organizations, and various Maya Garfinkel, who went on to work with World Beyond War. We protested, we had pizza nights where we researched our institutions' links to military industries, and we hosted speakers. After I joined the board as a student member with IPPNW Canada, many of my mentors through high school were from IPPNW Canada, and later I joined their staff. IPPNW gave me a platform to work with Ali and Linda, who are here and gave a workshop yesterday. And together we've been working with teachers' unions and ministries of education, and going to different places, different school boards across the country to develop teachers' networks for disarmament education, as well as resources and workshops on how to make disarmament education trauma-informed and nonpartisan, as well as other tools. And that's been meaningful work that I invite you all to join and be a part of. Bring it to your school, bring it to your teachers, help run workshops where you are. There's that sign there, and the website will be launching soon. Moving on to just some things that can be done, some things you could do, some ideas, some things people across Canada are doing. Make your high school a nuclear-free zone. As far as I know, Pugwash High from Nova Scotia, shout out to the 2 students from Dartmouth, here from the East Coast. Pugwash High School is the first high school I know of in the world that's a nuclear weapons-free zone. This is totally something that could be replicated. Super fantastic. Use democratic structures. I'd encourage you guys to think as big as possible. Dream big and make it happen. We have Seth talked about these in detail, so I won't. But I won't go on too long. But I'd also recommend checking out resources on Back from the Brink. These are some students who attended the conference last year who talked to their member of parliament. Talk to your member of parliament. We have, shout out, guys, round of applause to the students who were a part of making that happen. This member of parliament's from the Conservative Party, and when I was executive director of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War Canada, he wouldn't answer my emails. He wouldn't answer the emails of ICANN. He wouldn't answer anybody to discuss nuclear disarmament. But students from this conference were able to have a meeting with him, which was really fantastic. And it's you guys making this happen. So yeah, use democratic structures and use resources available. Use partnerships. The city's appeal also done in by folks who attended the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit. Shout out to Avinash. Shout out to Rojalie. Many of the other cities in Canada also led by youth and youth groups. Youth Parliament Nuclear Summit, another fantastic institution to use democratic structures and engage with decision makers, hosted by the Honorable Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, who will be speaking today. We're really lucky to have these democratic structures and also to have partners within Parliament who are inviting us to come and make our voices heard. You don't have to use any structures. You can also just use your passion, whether that's art or music, policy or poetry, whether you want to go into law or engineering, whether you love writing. There's a place for you. There's a place for everyone in this work. It's our world. We all are inheriting it, and it's every single person's job to take care of it. I want to, Max, if you could kindly stand up. We have the IPPNW Canada also has so many training programs. Max is a current intern, and I'd encourage you to go to him to learn more about them. He's got a link for interest forms. A lot of the folks who are involved in organizing this summit, as well as alumni of the summit, have been involved in some of our programming, and many of them have gone on to work with international institutions, civil society locally and internationally. Great opportunities to learn, join delegations, make community. Check out the internship program and speaker series. These are more organizations. I can put them somewhere, but social media to follow, to look out for opportunities. Schools you can go to study this more. I'll send this all to Avinash. Maybe we can make a post for the Instagram of this conference. There's tons of different social medias I'd recommend following. And then last piece of advice, so one of the greatest parts of my time in nuclear disarmament was when I was 17. I trekked out to a different city to see two people I love and adore dearly speak. Suzuko Thurlow, who accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of ICANN, a survivor of Hiroshima, an exceptional speaker and leader in this movement, and one of the most resilient people in this space, and Ray Atchison, who I've quoted many times before, and I was shaking. I was so excited to meet them. I immediately dropped the Nobel Peace Prize. So last piece of advice is, when you win a Nobel Peace Prize, don't let me hold it. The last thing I want to say about working in this space, I'm just going to refer to my notes, is that, peace doesn't require us to reinvent who we are or change any part of humanity. It just requires the evolution of what we've already built. We have the tools and we've been doing the work. It's been going on for generations that we're building on. We have blueprints for a better world. We have the United Nations Charter, the United Nations Declaration for Human Rights, and the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. The solutions are there, and they're not just documents. They're promises. They're milestones in our human journey that we have to move forward. Disarmament isn't the absence of something, though. It's the presence of trust, care, and cooperation. It's the presence of friendship. Because peace isn't built by documents or institutions alone, it happens both through and because of relationships. Each connection we make between social movements, between generations, between people, is its own small act of resistance against violence. Friendships are what make fears tangibles and abstract hopes become real. It's the energy that keeps us going when the work feels endless, and the resilience not to give up. It's the thread between generations and the reason why I'm here. The absence of nuclear war isn't an accident. It's the direct result of decades of activism of ordinary people organizing, marching, researching, writing, negotiating, and demanding change. We are alive because of that work. To paraphrase Douglas Roche, hope isn't passive. Hope is a verb. It's something we do. It's the daily choice between a future worth building and then to act like it's possible. It's what creates momentum, and it's how vision becomes a reality. When I look around the room and I see all of you who came to the Human Rights Museum, whether from a different coast or from a different country or from this very city, I feel that hope. I feel it as something that's very alive. We live in a moment of history where the shift between a culture of war and a culture of peace is happening, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. It's a privilege to be here with all of you. We're claiming that future, we're building it together, and hope is how we survive. And friendship is how we make that hope real. So thank you guys so much.